All right. Well, the time is 7:31 on Thursday, February 20th, 2025, and I'm calling the Village Market Commission's council meeting to order. We have some new and returning items on tonight's agenda, so we're going to jump right in. The first item is an update on the Suffolk County zoning and housing initiatives. We have asked Michelle, Attorney Michelle Rosenfeld, back again. Hi, Michelle. She's
Hi.
in real property, land use, and zoning law to provide the latest tonight. We heard from Michelle at our December meeting, and there have been major developments and legislative victories. Could I say that since then? So, but if you could please provide your insights about the latest. And,
Sure. Sure, I'll be happy to do that. Um, after the council sort of never introduced, it seemed to table its attainable housing strategies initiative, they did subsequently introduce a new program, a new initiative called, Housing Now, NOW. And it's really made up of 5 different components. One of them is a zoning text amendment, and that's really the one that I'm going to focus on this evening because it's the one of most relevance. In addition to a zoning text amendment, which modifies certain development standards, there are also some funding initiatives and other things to try and enhance the ability for additional housing. The Housing Now program, the zoning text amendment, is very different from the Attainable Housing Strategies Initiative that was really sort of globally proposed by Montgomery County Planning Board. It is much more limited, but it does have some of the same components. It's geographically far more limited because it is limited to corridors, certain corridors. And those corridors are defined as certain roadways that have a master plan recommended right of way greater than 100 feet. Generally speaking, for our purposes, it would be Connecticut, Wisconsin, Bradley Boulevard. There is a map that has been published that will show you lot by lot where the sponsors say those lots would be located. Typically, it's only supposed to be the lots that front on those corridors. There is an ambiguity in the legislation, however. The Councilmember Friedson has said that it is only those lots that front on a corridor and have a driveway access. So if it's a corner lot and has driveway access to a side street, in his view, the legislation would not allow the lot on the side street to be eligible for redevelopment under this program. But that's not what the law specifically says. So I think that's something that will request clarification. So essentially, the lots that would be eligible under this proposal are lots that have frontage on those corridors. So what does that mean? That means that if a developer wants to redevelop one of these properties with one of 3 types of housing units, other than just a single family, they need to be eligible under certain financial standards. They need to meet certain eligibility criteria, either long-term rental restrictions or long-term resale restrictions. So the new housing types that would be allowed are a duplex, a triplex, townhouses, which are 4 or more units with shared vertical walls, or an apartment, which would be 4 or more units with shared horizontal walls. And so if a developer has a piece of property that fronts on a corridor and wants to and is willing to go through the redevelopment process, meeting the financial restrictions that are imposed, then it could redevelop these single family housing lots for these more dense types of housing units. There is a requirement that says that if you're developing a triplex, that at least 15% of the units need to meet the financial restrictions. It says that if you're developing 3 or more units, at least one of those units needs to meet those standards. It doesn't say anything about 2 units, which raises a question in my mind. Are they subject to the law or not? That's another potential ambiguity. And then finally, there is a question as to whether or not a developer can assemble, sort of stack properties. So if you have a property that fronts on Connecticut, can you stack the 1 or 2 behind it and assemble a larger lot? Or contiguous lots, I think there's really not much question. Councilmember Friesen has said that no, you can't stack those units to the rear. But again, that's another one of those issues that is not clearly stated in the law. And I think that's something that we would want to have clarified going forward. So the maximum height limit is 40 feet. Depending on where you are, there may be some reduction in setbacks or some increase in lot coverage that would apply under these zoning standards that are imposed by the county. But at this moment, at least, the municipalities retain your own jurisdictional authority over the developments. The other piece that's very different from the attainable housing strategies initiative is that approach would have allowed a developer to come in and simply seek a building permit, move forward, quote, by right. In this scenario, any of these projects would have to go through a site plan level review before the planning board. So that provides an opportunity for public hearing, public process. There is an additional layer of regulatory review that would not have been possible under the attainable housing. And the other difference, which may be self-evident from what I've said, the notion of a 500-foot wide corridor that was eligible for some of these higher densities by right, that concept is no longer there. It really is limited to properties that front on the defined corridors. So I think those are the big picture highlights. I'm happy to take questions, or if there's something else you'd like me to elaborate on. As far as the zoning text amendment itself, I think that hits the high notes.
I recall, I may be recalling this wrong, but there was some kind of it had to meet some kind of like an employment need demonstration to do this, or is that gone?
This is a workforce housing bill, and so it needs to meet standards that are set forth actually in the county's housing bill. It needs to meet it needs to either be available under certain rental restrictions, and those standards are set out in the county's housing policy, or it needs to be restricted for purposes of resale, price restricted. So those standards actually are not set out in the zoning ordinance. They're set out in the county's housing policy.
Already there.
But yes, there are, but the financial limitations don't apply to all of the units. It's a minimum of 15% of the units.
So when you say restrictions, it means it has to be a rental price below a certain level.
Below certain, right. It needs to, the rent needs to be eligible for people at a certain annual minimum income. I honestly have forgotten off the top of my head, but they're codified standards in the code.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, Jeff, do you have any questions for Michelle?
I was gonna, sure, but
I don't, but Susan, you, Jeff?
Sure. First of all, Michelle, this might be the first time we are talking face to face this way, because last time I I was pulled into something, but thank you. You have been a calming and steady influence for us through
Thank
these
you.
turbulent times. So really appreciate it and appreciate your readout. And I did have a couple questions, but some could be taken offline to conserve real estate on this meeting agenda. First, so from my understanding, do you perceive then, is VMA impacted? Because I think from what you shared, we're not on those corridors, though we are adjacent or nearby, but please clarify that for me.
Yeah, if you are not directly on one of the corridors, then you would not be affected. And if you have not seen, there's an interactive map. And if you have not seen that, I can forward that link to you, and you will be able to zoom in literally lot by lot and be able to see which properties, at least as far as the county council is concerned, would be eligible for redevelopment under these standards.
Got it. And just a few more quick
Well,
ones.
the
I
village is
appreciate it.
not on East, West, or Connecticut, so we're currently not on any of the identified border streets.
Got it. Thanks, Ron. And so east-west is identified as a corridor. Okay.
Yes.
Just a couple more things to pepper there. What has been, or have you, just in a quick soundbite or two, the other sections that are directly affected? How have you, do you have a quick sort of, are they still up in arms? Do they feel that, you know, this is something that is better than what they had? Or are they still perhaps fighting this, you know, aggressively?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that obviously the general sense is this is a significant improvement over what had been previously considered. I do think that there are concerns, in part at least, over uh, potential continued erosion of municipal authority over local land use decisions. I don't at this point have any reason to think that there's wholesale opposition. I do know that we are continuing to ask questions about some of the implementation. I think we have some concerns about ambiguities, like several of them that I mentioned earlier. But I don't have a sense that that there's going to be a wholesale opposition at this point.
That's super helpful. And then just a couple more, three more that are kind of, I think, relatively quick. I may have missed it. So it sounded like if there is something, it would have to go through the county planning board. But where do the jurisdictions of the sections, what is their ability to perhaps weigh in, or is there an ability?
Sure. A number of them have their own permit review procedures, particularly for building permits. And so they have standards that apply for height and setback, those kinds of things. At the moment, it's our view that they would retain that authority to review the same types of building permits that they review now under the existing authority that they have.
And I know this is another conversation for another time, but that's where that state amendment, I guess, sort of plays in a little bit with those other housing types. And yeah,
That's correct. It's very important because that would apply to residential structures of 4 or fewer units, and enormous amount of credit to Ron for helping shepherd that through. We have the support of the full delegation, Montgomery County delegation at this point, and now it's in the hands of capable Delegate Solomon.
yeah, you're both our heroes. We appreciate it. Two more quick ones. I've always been a little bit anxious about the purple line and how that, I think there were some of those interactive maps that kind of blew past into Martin's Addition. And I'm just curious, this is not the conversation tonight that we're having, but are you aware of anything there that we still need to be concerned about? Because some of those plans with the purple line, I think the mile or whatever it is, I think they did cut into Martin's additions substantially.
Are you talking about how the Purple Line might qualify as a transit facility for purposes of land use and zoning?
It was the old one that was dropped under the old plan that has since been
The
dropped.
1 mile.
It was within a
uh,
mile
Yeah.
of the,
Yeah.
of
Of
a station.
Right, right. I am,
So that's gone, I presume.
that is gone. That is completely gone from this zoning text amendment. It may have some implications for some of the state bills that are floating around out there, but we're still going through those, and there are some that talk about transit, but it's unclear to me whether or not those relate to the Purple Line. But we'll be monitoring those and updating you on that as needed.
Amazing. And this is my last one, I promise. So what are we missing? Where's the hidden mole in this in terms of, maybe there's a sense, well, and again, I know I want to be respectful to other sections and other residents in those sections, because as much as they may have gotten some concessions, those are still, significant plans in terms of what Connecticut may look like east-west highway. So again, this is not as if, but putting that aside, looking out, is this something that somehow that could lead to even more? Like, do we feel there's a whack-a-mole here that is in play, but we just don't quite know what it could be yet?
My personal instinct is yes, and this is my gut check on this. I think it's a first step. I don't think they have abandoned broader components of the attainable housing strategy goals. I think we're seeing it play out in a more limited way, perhaps on the University Corridor Master Plan that's currently underway. They've taken several blocks of University Boulevard. They're doing a mini master plan. It's several blocks long, it's several lots deep, and they're basically going through the master plan process. They will upzone, and there will be hundreds of residential multifamily units built if that plan comes to fruition. So my experience is the county rarely gives up on something they've invested so much time and effort to get to this point.
Yeah.
And so rather than just tackle it all at once, I think they're going to tackle it in smaller bites. It's easy to fight a small community, much easier than try and take on 86% of the county at once, which is what the last proposal effectively did. That's my instinct.
Great. Well, thanks. And I appreciate you humoring me and everyone who's on the call and here, contently as I ask these questions. But again, can't thank you enough. And yeah, it would be great to figure out how we stay on top of this whack-a-mole, because I feel that there may be a resurface, but we just want to make sure that it doesn't catch us by surprise.
Sure. And that's really just a question of constant monitoring. It could be they get zoning text amendment 2502 passed, and that's it for a year. Or it could be they get this passed, and in March we see something else, or June, or it could, we just don't know how quickly they're going to roll things out if they really do have a plan to take this incrementally. It's just a question of vigilance, really.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. Would you be open to a question from a resident? We have a couple of resident hands up too. Okay, I see Marty's hands up. Marty Langland? No, mute. Oh, Marty, I think you're on mute.
Okay, there. Thank you. Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Michelle. I want to follow up on Jeff's questions, and Michelle, thank you again for a good report. I'm concerned still about the infrastructure impact, especially as if you say there may be a phase 2 and phase 3 of this that's much more invasive, that affects, the interiors of our neighborhoods the way the AHSI did. I understand that the county has, as part of this proposed ETA package, reduced the impact taxes for developers and also reduced the long-term property taxes for developers. In other words, this is a real financial boon for developers in terms of the financial side of it. And none of these pieces, this 5-piece proposal they've come back with now in round 2, none of it addresses the infrastructure needs of a community. For example, Martin's Additions does not have the infrastructure in place to double our population. So is it true that this is really a boondoggle for developers in terms of the financial side of it? First, could you comment on that? And number 2, is there anything that would prevent the infrastructure impact from landing foursquare on a local community to rebuild our sewer and water lines to handle increased capacity down the road? Because I see nothing in here that would help Martin's Additions pay that cost.
Right. As far as the financial boondoggle, I can't really speak to that. There are tax benefits that are being offered as part of this. In addition, the county is significantly increasing funding to the Housing Initiative Fund to help subsidize loans and other financial mechanisms available to developers. I hear mixed stories about whether this is a boon for developers or not. And I have my own personal view, but I'm in no position to tell you anything with any real knowledge base on that. In terms of impact on local infrastructure, that remains a concern. It absolutely remains a concern. Remains a concern for water sewer, for stormwater runoff, for loss of trees, for on-street parking, for additional traffic. So, for example, if you build a 4-stick townhouse row on Connecticut Avenue, and you now have 4 families that are driving in and out of a curb cut onto Connecticut, that's an additional infrastructure impact. With respect to water and sewer, that I don't think is typically handled at the municipal level. I think that's handled generally between developers and WSSC. But I would need to look into that to give you a more certain answer in that respect. But in terms of other general infrastructure impacts, very much remains a concern.
Yeah, part of the
I would
issue, of course,
echo-
is school kids, the additional
Correct?
families with school kids, and the schools are already underfunded, and BCC is so overcrowded, it's ridiculous.
Correct.
And this legislation doesn't seem to address any developer contribution to pay for school expansions.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
All right, I don't see any other comments. We have some comments in the room. Lori, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, hi, I'm Lori Mitchell.
Lori?
Oh, could we have you stand up here? This is our new nifty equipment we have right here. So you
Hi.
got right there.
Lori Mitchell, I live on Cummings Lane, and I just wanted to ask you if the plan includes any provisions for how they'll define future corridors. Brookville Road has been an issue for years since I've lived here. They've talked about expanding the bus service. And is there anything that would prevent them for down the road or a year from now making Brookville Road one of these corridors?
To the extent they're doing this all through legislation, there is not. And that is a concern that they pass this, they identify the lots that they say are now eligible, and then they move on to a different segment of any of these roads, or allow it to apply to narrower roads. There is no there's no prohibition against them doing that.
Okay, thank you. It's unfortunate, but thank you.
All right. Well, any other questions? Okay. Well, Michelle, once again, thank you
You're welcome.
for visiting us once again. Ron, you've been our original legal eagle too. Do you have anything you wanted to add to the latest update?
On ZTA 2502, no, I don't think I could add anything other than since Martin's Additions isn't impacted by some of my other clients, probably not as pertinent for you, but I mean, one thing I would like to see is that the deed restrictions for the affordability aspect be longer than 20 years. 20 years doesn't seem long enough for me, and it goes away in the event of a foreclosure.
Right.
I think it should be 40 years at least. 40 years is what was recommended in a similar state law, so there might be some basis for comparison there.
And it's
Mm.
significantly shorter than MPDU restrictions, which I think are 99 years.
What's NPDU?
Moderately priced dwelling unit.
Oh, okay.
And Ron, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt,
no, it's fine.
but I agree with you.
I just want to say, Lori brings up an excellent point about the bus lanes, and that might be something, again, that maybe that is part of the mobile resurfacing. And is there anything about the size of the Brookville corridor now that, you know, would restrict that? Would there be anything? Again, I know this is a separate discussion, but I think it is worth understanding, because anyone who knows Brookville, especially during peak hours, it is just, you know, and we already have safety issues, so that would be helpful. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Michelle and Ron. Thanks very much for
Thank
joining.
you both.
Thank you.
Okay.
And you're welcome to stay or jump off. I know you have a lot to do.
I think I'll jump off, but I
life
appreciate the
of your own.
invitation.
You can, no
You're
many
in
minutes time.
excellent hands with Ron. You don't.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
That's
Good night.
true. Thank
Night.
you. Thank you so much, Michelle. All right, well, next up, weather report. Our resident weatherman, Keith Allen. Is there more snow or wind? There's been a lot of wind, Keith. What's with the wind?
Well, there's gonna be a lot of wind tomorrow,
Oh, no.
but then the good news is that we've got 50s, even a 60 in our future next week.
Huh.
But then it's gonna get cold again, but we're gonna be in March by that time, and the normal high temperature for the first week or 10 days of March is actually in the low to mid 50s. So even if we're, you know, below normal in temperature, you know, it would be like upper 40s, 50 degrees. It wouldn't be so bad. Are we gonna have any more snow in our future? Afraid we probably will. We got very, very lucky. Our neighbors to the south, Richmond, had 6 inches. It was 8 inches in, well, Ocean City had heavy snow. Norfolk, Virginia had 10 inches. So we've been very lucky. I mean, Little Rock, Arkansas, Lexington, Kentucky, Louisville, they all got dumped on with this snow.
Yep.
We had nothing here. And I might add that I didn't forecast any snow here, maybe just a few flurries, and that was it. But what I did forecast was a mild winter, and I was definitely wrong.
That's all right. You weren't the only one who had forecasted that.
I'm glad your memory goes back that far.
I'm calling in the audio fault. Thank you.
That's all right, Keith. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item, we're going to have, resident comments. Any resident comments, concerns, questions? Out there? Oh, okay. Marty, is that a new hand? I think she got a new hand up. Yeah.
Yes, new hand, and
Yeah,
thank
new
you
hand.
again.
Okay, sure.
I was looking at Michael's manager's report, and I want to just publicly praise Michael for moving forward on the issue of parking enforcement in Martin's Additions, which has been an issue for a number of residents for quite a while. And thank you, Michael. From your report, it looks like we will have the authority soon, and that Wayne will be working with you to issue first warnings and then tickets, particularly, I hope, for the trucks that block access to some of our streets and the parking area behind the village shops. So, Michael, my question for you is, what's the timeline on that? How soon do we expect to be able to have you guys start issuing warnings and then ticketing the violators?
Doing it right now. Michael's doing it now.
We're waiting for the county attorney to review the agreement that Ron drafted for us, copying a very similar agreement in another municipality. My understanding is the county attorney has that agreement in front of them and they're reviewing it right now. So I will keep following up, but I don't want to start issuing warnings or announcing that we have this authority until we make sure we're all on the same page and we have that signed agreement in hand.
Do we know when we'll get an answer from the attorney?
I can't speak for how fast the attorney the county attorney responds things.
But
Our
you do-
attorney responds very
Yeah.
fast, but
You do have
Yes,
your
thank you, Ron.
powerful, little yellow notebook there, if you want to show
I do
what it looks
have,
like. It looks very powerful.
I do have the tickets in
serious.
hand, if you're in the office or on camera there.
It's bright yellow.
So I have the tickets, I've been trained, and we're just waiting on the county attorney now.
Bravo. I guess this is a little tongue in cheek, but first, is there any training that you need to go through to be an official traffic enforcement officer? And do you get a uniform like you wearing like the, no, I just want to
Another
know
hat.
if I
Where's
spot
the hat?
you in a different attire,
Or
what
just
does
a
that mean?
badge.
No uniform for me, please.
He is signed up for his concealed carry. That's next Thursday.
Oh, good Lord.
No, absolutely not. But I have been trained, and I went to
Yes.
the county Department of Transit offices and met with the parking enforcement supervisor, and they walked me through the whole process. And I have an SOP on how to write tickets, so I will be able to deputize Wayne, our operations manager, to issue tickets as well.
Mhm.
If the county attorney signs this contract or this agreement.
So it's
So,
pending.
Pending, yes.
Does this bring revenue in for us?
It does. And
It can, yeah.
there's lots of different types of tickets we can write. Everything from within 5 feet of parking within 5 feet of a driveway, to parking in a handicap spot. Parking in a handicap spot without a handicap thing is a $250 ticket. The current agreement is for them to give the county to give us 75% of that revenue from any of the tickets. So these range everything from $50 to $250, depending on
Can
the
you do
violation.
$1,500 for all the folks who go in the wrong way? That's all there's to it.
Traffic control is different than parking, but yeah, this is only parking. And just to clarify, one thing Marty said is this is not for the parking lot. We don't have jurisdiction
Oh,
over the
right,
parking
right,
lot.
that's the-
Understood.
right. But
Thank
a portion goes back to the, and we keep.
We
it's a-
keep
yeah,
75%.
75%.
According to the agreement right now, we'll see if they
Okay,
tweak
Right.
that. But
okay,
yeah,
fingers crossed. Okay, I think
That's right.
Lynn Welly has a question, and then Larry.
Yes, Michael, you said within 5 feet of a driveway. What's the point of origin for the 5-foot measurement?
that's I guess state law. That
County
you're-
law.
Edge
County
of
law,
the edge of the apron, I think is
Edge
the
of the
question.
You're not supposed to park within 5 feet of a driveway.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
but,
curb, I would imagine.
but where does the 5-foot measurement begin? Along, somewhere along the curb.
Yeah.
Yeah, at where the driveway is.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. You know, the driveways, they come out and then there's a curve.
Yeah.
Into the straight curve and then there's a cut.
Right, it's 5 feet from that radius, Lynn, from the edge of the apron.
I'm not gonna be out with a tape measure. It's just a matter if people are blocking driveways, I want to be able to issue tickets.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll stop by and maybe get a better idea of what I'm trying to ask. Thank you.
Let's see, is that Larry hand up?
Yeah, I just, Michael, didn't I see you writing a ticket in front of your favorite restaurant in Bethesda? I was just checking.
To get a parking space.
Oh, I got.
Okay. Oh, Lori, do you have a question?
I don't know, that went over my head.
Jeff and a little bit Arthur.
Okay.
Over the years, Arthur, when you were treasurer, you always seemed to keep us informed when economic times were changing.
My standard statement, there is a recession coming at some point.
Yes, you have said that. I remember.
Right, but I
And I've
think
always been right.
you have been right. And
Because
you-
a recession
talked-
always is
Well,
coming.
and you've
Yeah.
talked about, you've thought about how the budget's going to
Right.
work.
Yeah.
And the government's making a lot of changes. It seems like our area may be affected more so than a lot of the other places in the country. I'm sure there'll be a macro effect, but and we still don't know what the effects are. I'm hyper aware of this at Cummings Lane right now, even though it has nothing to do with the government. We have 5 houses that are empty. And that means, no income tax revenue since those houses are not occupied. And I'm just wondering how you're thinking about whether we need to keep more money in reserve or just how you're thinking about this.
I'm
I'm
very
sorry,
glad
Steve.
you asked. I know
Okay,
with
I'll
the
sit
treasurer
down.
report, I did have a line item I was gonna mention, about this, if that's okay.
Oh, sure.
I mean, it looks like we're gonna get to it relatively soon,
Okay.
unless you wanted me to do the treasurer report in like, a couple minutes or less. Now, it's up to you.
You can answer this question and do the rest later.
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe just do that.
So just putting out there, so on the treasurer's report, what we see actually, if we look at the actual versus budget for total income at this point
Right.
in the year, you actually have a surplus of over $450,000. You look at that and you're like, wow, and then you know that our reserves are, plus minus about 6 million. So anyone, including our auditors, when you look at that, we are in great financial standing. However, okay, now let's peel back the layers of the onion, which I've chatted about before. If you take away the artificial sweeteners of that, which are roughly about over 400,000 of ARPA money, and then if you look at the income so far of interest income, it's roughly almost 200,000. So these are, so first of all, take away all the ARPA artificial sweetener, which ends this year. And then you take away, or the assumption is the interest rates will also change, but you can't guarantee. All I'm saying is that when you do just that basic math and you subtract a certain proportion of the interest income, actually all of those surpluses go away and we're actually a little bit under. So I think to your point, going forward, and we know inflation and other things, I think once the artificial sweeteners go away, you're going to see a very close to this gimbal lock of our expenses and income. And like you're saying, if there are any dips for whatever reason around maybe some of the effects of some of the new types of housing that may have an impact, or there could be, sadly enough, maybe job losses that are forthcoming. With all of that said, it may have an impact in the near term, but we're able to cover it for now. The question is, we really have to be on top of it 3 and 5 years out, because our reserves, if we cross that line in perpetuity, where our income, the way that we're spending now, goes under our annual expenses, we're going to be in the red as opposed to the black very quickly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not an alarmist thing.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Because I
It's
mean,
just
this
a
could also be,
business design.
even if we were, and we're fairly fiscally conservative, even if we did sort of those lines crossed, I mean, you're talking about a 10-year horizon of, and maybe never, if depending upon how our assets are. But I do agree the idea of we don't want to blow $5 million on, a new whatever that might be. Swimming pool, community swimming pool, yes.
Where's that gonna go?
So anyway, I think I took that time because I think it's important.
Yeah,
and
no,
a very
okay,
important
thank you for
thing
that.
to consider.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
answering that. Yeah. Anybody else in the room? Question, comment? Keith?
It's Tiffany.
Oh, okay, I'll go back to Tiffany.
I've been at every meeting the last 20 years. Record will show I've never missed a meeting. I don't always stay the whole time,
That's okay.
which is probably going to be tonight. But I do have something I'd like to ask the council to consider. I think it's very important.
Okay.
It's speed bumps on Turner Lane on my street. I know that the speed bumps are meant mainly for through traffic from Brookville to Western Avenue, vice versa. And that makes a whole lot of sense. But there's so many children.
Mhm.
And there seem to be more and more of them now. People with dogs and cars just race down the street. Sometimes parents to pick up their children and they're in a hurry.
Mhm.
So I'd like that to be considered on
Okay,
the safety
we've been talking about
of
it.
our
Yeah.
beautiful
Do it.
community here
Good.
and our young residents.
Well taken. Andrew will be very happy.
Yes, he will be. Yeah, unfortunately, Andrew, he's abroad tonight. He's visiting with his mom and we wish him well. So he's absent tonight, but where did we leave that? Forget.
It's on my list of projects for this
yeah,
year.
uh-huh.
It's at the bottom of the list, so I'm trying to
Okay.
get through all the other ones. But and I did mention this to the council, I think last week or 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
that I wanted to get some estimates on for Turner. It comes up most frequently.
Mhm,
And then Chestnut comes up the second most frequently
mhm.
with requests for speed bumps. Anywhere where there's a hill, cars really do pick up
Yeah.
speed. So I know there's not through traffic necessarily for those streets, but
Mhm.
yeah, it is worth looking at, and I'm supportive of it. I just need to get estimates. So
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
and there's also an idea to do curb extensions. The old walkability study had
Mhm.
curb extensions ideas at the edge of the village on Cummings and Shepherd,
Okay.
to kind of narrow the street there as a traffic calming measure. And that's an opportunity to have a little like planter bed as well there, which does help absorb rainwater.
Mhm.
So those are ideas that are still on the plate. I would like to get some actual estimates, so I have something to present to you all.
Okay. Do you think we could have that next meeting or? is it-
I don't know.
We'll
I don't
see.
know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to
We'll
start
keep
calling
hope,
around.
we'll
Yeah.
hope. Okay, we'll
Yeah,
try for it.
I
Keep
did on
pushing.
my list.
That's
I
right.
do apologize as a quick footnote. I see Tiffany has her hand up, so just very quickly. We are, and I know Michael will mention this, but it was in the treasurer's report. We are having an open budget planning session
Oh, yes,
next
right.
week. So I mean, I know folks are busy and stuff, but that's a
Mhm.
great time also to
It's in
kind
the
of get
evening,
involved.
right? This time?
7:30.
Yes,
It'll be in the
7:30.
evening and it'll
Yes.
be on Zoom.
Okay.
encourage, but it'll be probably recorded, but still, yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that, Jeff. Okay, Tiffany Cisna, do you have a comment, question?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you're
Mhm.
there. Wherever
Okay.
you are, we hear you.
Yes. Actually, we're back for training, so not too far away.
Okay.
I thank you guys for your meeting and for the meeting packet. I just briefly on the budget, Jeff, thanks for the session. I saw that it's on the calendar for Tuesday, the 25th at 7:30, so that's helpful. There were two things on your agenda. I wanted to mention the comms listserv, questions about potentially funding that by the council. And obviously there are speech issues, questions that would need to be answered if the government was giving money to anything that was potentially regulating or moderating speech. I also just wanted to offer that I learned while we were abroad, WhatsApp is a great tool that you can have more than 1,000 people using at one time for free and in a group. And you can make breakout groups within that. So if somebody in Martin's Editions wanted to do a listserv via WhatsApp, they could do that. And
Well,
people could
company
create
again,
their own
what's the service called?
WhatsApp.
Oh, WhatsApp. Oh, okay, yeah.
And people can make breakout groups like we want to go hiking, we want to play cards, we're interested in blah blah blah. And as somebody who's not tech savvy, it was very easy for me to learn how to use and create. So just offering that there are other options out there that are quite familiar to many folks that wouldn't have maybe some of the sticky issues that the current proposal has. And then the other thing, I sent a note to the council, just thanks for the response, Katie, on the donation question. I think it's a slippery slope that, years ago, we started receiving requests for funding from Martin's Editions to go to parent-teacher associations. And I think wisely at the time, council then said, we need to have a policy that just says we're not going to do this. And so I hope that continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments, Tiffany. I don't see any other hands raised and no one in the room. So I think that's a good launch pad into our next item, which is the listserv proposal. For some context first, last month, you may recall we received a presentation on the 2024 VMA survey by the Institute for Governmental Research Service and Research at University of Maryland. And the presentation focused on, our survey questions, which is helpful. the survey response rate, but my favorite part was the comment section. And the last survey had at least 15 comments that had to do with the VMA listserv alone. And, from what I've gathered, the current listserv is administered by a resident, but the current format is problematic and adding new members. And, for example, I know 2 former neighbors who moved away, well, probably a year ago, and they're still subscribed, but somebody who just moved in and who's really interested in meeting people and posting is unable to be added, and that's frustrating and problematic. But we have this dedicated group of residents, I understand, who have met on how to build a totally new list or on another platform. And so I'm going to give the floor to you, if you don't mind.
Thank you,
Sure.
Katie, and thank you, Tiffany, for your comments as well, which I heard and I appreciate.
And sorry, Yasmina, anyone wants to follow? It's in page 2 of the packet along. Okay, go ahead.
So, the listserv, you all, I think every person in this room, every person who's listening tonight knows that we currently have a listserv on Google that some residents are on, but many residents are not able to join. And one of the issues with that is, I think, administrative access has been lost somehow. And so whatever happens, we need to move to a new tool in order to be able to reestablish access to new folks who want to join the listserv. A group of residents got together because people have been very frustrated about it. We looked at whether this was something we could do through the Village Engagement Committee. We got very clear guidance from our council representatives on the Engagement Committee that that this could not be a village function. So some private residents got together, some of the old who have been working on the listserv for years, and some new folks. Marty Langland, Susan Mitchell, myself, David Salter, and Jean Sperling. We all gathered in my living room to try and figure out how we could resolve this. And we tried to do it for free. That was our first look. And we tried to look at Google Groups and whether that would work. One of the things we found, though, is people have been complaining that Google is difficult to navigate. You have to create a Gmail account in order to access it, and people want to be able to get onto a listserv without that barrier. We did not look at WhatsApp because that was not an option that we were aware of at the time. I've used the WhatsApp account extensively. I've used WhatsApp Business to communicate with large number of people. I have to say, I found that that tool wasn't the easiest to use, and I'm pre-tech savvy. But I'm open to learning about new tools. So we looked at what's already out there and what other communities are using, and a lot of communities have moved to IO groups. People seem to be comfortable with it. Everyone who has a kid at BCC is probably using that account to follow their activities within the school. Our goal is to create a welcoming environment for people to just be able to connect, be able to ask for help, let people know that there's a dog wandering down Brookville Road that needs to be picked up and who does the dog belong to. Be able to let people know that there's a great event going on nearby, folks might be able to join. We want to have a listserv with very light moderation. This isn't a place where we're going to tell people what they can say and what they can't say. However, we want it to be positive and comfortable for everyone, right? So that there will be guidelines that will be very transparent and advertised within the listserv. I hope, though, because the IO groups is not a free tool, is that this is something that the village might consider helping us pay for. We can go to residents and ask residents to pay for it if necessary. It's 40 cents a person. It's a really small budget item. We estimate that if 2 people in each household in the village join, it will cost as much as $286 a year, which is a very small cost, all things considered, for our village. And we're hoping that the village will sponsor this. The listserv will be moderated by a team of 2 to try and keep some balance. So one person isn't making decisions and there's a dialogue that goes on. And also to make sure that if somebody's not there, somebody else can take over. It would be completely separate from the VMA. No member of the council would make any decision over what is said, what is not said. This would be a separate group of moderators who are residents themselves, and really towards keeping the listserv a positive place for us all.
Well, thank you.
We're hoping the council will consider this. Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you. Thank you, Yasmina. And thank you to all the residents who've worked to resuscitate this listserv. I'd like to open it up for a discussion with the council. And, from what I've gathered, I just, I think this is a good plan. I like that it would be for the people, by the people, but not the village staff or council members. And I think we need a place like that in this day and age. And so just in terms of like the guidelines, and that would be my one concern, is that all residents, if they want to, would be able to join. So that's been my biggest issue that I've heard about. And then just sort of what kind of guidelines and decorum are you thinking for if exchanges got out of hand or?
Right. So the one thing that we're going to be very clear about is political speech, right? We want this to be a comfortable place for all. We know that there are people of all different kinds of perspectives within our village. And so one of the guidelines is that you can let people know an event is happening and what the logistics are, that there's an election going on, for example, within the village, and you need to turn up at a certain time, but you can't present any partisan information about a candidate. Okay. So that would be just the same rule for everyone, right? We're just, as part of this community, we want to be very positive. Everyone can join, just those are the limitations. And then if, for example, there's a conversation of 2, 3 people that becomes a little acrimonious and goes on, the moderators will have the ability to say, okay, please take that conversation offline now. We're not telling you can't have that conversation. We're just saying, please take it elsewhere, because really this is for everyone. And this isn't, people don't want to have their inboxes clogged up with,
an exchange.
A lot, 10, 20 emails about one topic that's not of interest to them, because that's really when we start losing people. So it's really these rules would only, the idea of these rules is just to keep this a positive place where everyone can express themselves and exchange ideas and needs. And we also know that these listservs are primarily used to find contractors, to help one another. We don't expect that this is going to be a place, a platform for discussion.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. I have one other question, and I want to ask you all. In terms of the cost, and asking council for that, when you were doing your research on Groups.io and the other municipalities, did you happen to find out how they subscribe or how they pay for it, or do they pay for it? Or I do like Groups.io. I am on the BCC listserv, and it's an excellent exchange with guidelines and moderators.
Yeah, and our guidelines are really, they really do mimic. I mean, we borrowed very generously from BCC because they've done such a good job. Those moderators are excellent, and they keep a really nice space. I'm not sure, to be honest, how other municipalities pay for the listserv. We didn't call up the village managers to
That's
look
fine.
into that.
That's okay. Just wondered. Susan, do you have any questions?
I think it's a great idea. It's been under discussion for a long time, and I think it would be wonderful to have a listserv that's open to everyone and that is actually monitored so that the guidelines are observed and adhered to by all. I do have a problem with the First Amendment concern, as I always do, about injecting funds. What I would propose is that we just pay for it out of our own pockets. And if you want to do a GoFundMe type crowdfunding thing, I'll be happy to make the first donation, more than my,
More
40
than
cents
40
or
cents,
whatever.
more than your
Yeah.
40 cents worth.
I mean, I think that's the way to go,
I
honestly,
do
to
want to
keep it really.
respond to your proposal, and I understand. One of the concerns was sustainability. And if you set up a tool and you start getting people on it, right, you want that tool to be in place for a few years.
Sure.
And if we're in a position where we have to go kind of hat in hand every year to, folks who are on the listserv to say, hey, please contribute, that jeopardizes the sustainability of the tool, and also puts a lot of work on the moderators who, out of their time, moderating this tool. Hopefully they're not, the idea is not really to, look at, none of the messages are going to be approved by moderators. It's just going to be a light touch, right? If something gets out of hand, or we're finding that somebody's posting political perspectives and we have to say, hey, that's not appropriate for this space, right? You can have that discussion in another space. That's all. So we're not telling people what they can and what they cannot say.
Right,
We're just trying to create a posive,
Well, if you do,
community-driven space.
if by moderating, if you are really moderating, you will be telling people what to say or cannot say. I mean, that's what moderation is. I mean, so, but I have a question for Ron on this. What is the role of the village as a public institution, and the whole issue of speech, free speech, speech that may be in conflict with the village, and so on?
That's
Sure.
if the village contributes to pay for
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
And
if we
that's
pay, right.
That's why this all gets
Yeah,
triggered.
yeah, only if we
If
pay.
it's done
That's the pay,
through,
right.
through the funds through the village.
Yeah,
If it were done through out of pocket, as Susan's suggesting,
Then you do what you want. Yeah.
people could say whatever they want, and we
Yeah.
wouldn't have to be concerned about that.
yeah, there's two related issues. And one is liability, and the other is creating a free speech forum. So with respect to the first item, liability, in the past, the village has shied away from having an official forum because it does take moderation. And for that reason, we've been happy to point people to the private listserv, but have disclaimed its officialness, because if it is official, then we have to be responsible for what's posted there. Because in today's society, it's not difficult to imagine people filing lawsuits because they relied to their detriment based on information put on a public listserv, or there was speech that offended them, etc. So if you pay for the listserv, then there's an argument that you're creating an official forum and you're responsible for its content. I think we could adequately disclaim with appropriate disclaimers at the sign up and on, maybe email footers, etc., and in our official minutes and the like. So I think the risk there is small, but it is a risk nonetheless. And then the second issue, so if we're going to use village funds to create a forum for speech, then the argument might be created that we have to provide the same venue or opportunity for other requests for money that come in. So, when the red aliens from Mars ask for their own listserv. Have we set a precedent for the expenditure of public funds? There too, I think the risk is probably remote. I don't think funding a private listserv would be that controversial. I am aware of one other municipality in the area that does do so, and the cost is so small that the risk of someone being upset with the expenditure is probably remote. But again, there are risks, and that's why prior councils haven't gotten engaged, despite that, as one council member noted, this has been an issue that's gone on for a long time. The debate as to what we should do with official or unofficial listservs.
And how would we even, I guess we could take it, maybe just get it out, is how would we even do the transaction? I mean, are we paying a vendor for a service? I'm just wondering how this even transacts, because it is, I looked it up, there's a license fee up to 400 folks is roughly that 250, but if you go over 400, it can go up to over 2,000. So I just wanted to kind of get a sense of, is this something that we're paying directly a vendor for a service?
I think in the other jurisdiction, it's done as a reimbursement.
Okay. So it would be the residents who are doing this, they would submit a receipt and we would,
Right. But I mean, that's not to say that's the only way it can be done.
I wanted to your point, Ron, about the disclaimer, we do have language currently in the guidelines that we're working on. They're still to be reviewed by all the committee members. That is basically a very clear disclaimer, and we'd be happy to pass that language by you as well, but to say that, basically you're posting at your own risk, that, none of the recommendations on the listserv have been vetted, that it's your duty to do due diligence before hiring somebody. That there's a very clear language there, and we'd be happy to pass it by you.
Okay.
Well, is this will we
Do we
a
need more
motion to
information
vote? Well,
before we actually decide?
well, I
Like
think-
what the actual costs are and
I think page
It will-
2, they've done
I mean,
their
it's
research and
here,
homework.
but is that-
Well, the only issue is we do have a vote and we're council member short tonight. That's one issue. So I don't know how Andrew would feel or.
We don't have proxy votes, so.
Right,
it's-
we can't do,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean.
now
that-
this is I know the amount small, but that's not the issue. It's more of, so first, we have a budget meeting next week. I mean, is this something where you could even do it within the current budget versus that you, okay, so we have that level of discretionary for something like this for reimbursement, that is not an issue, okay.
So reimbursement means that you pay your 40 cents and you submit. And
The moderators would just give me a receipt and I would write them a check.
for like an aggregate,
Yeah, for whatever the cost is.
I see, okay.
Just like we do for any resident who like is on the CEC, buys something for the
Yeah.
Halloween party.
I
and
issue
they keep the receipts and you.
Give
send the
receipts.
receipts back. Yeah.
All right, I'll jump in. I'll
Okay,
jump in
all right.
and say, first of all, I want to thank yourself and the others. I mean, this has been something that has been a bit of a boondoggle for good reasons. I mean, I get, it's not the money, it's the other piece of it. And so I get it. I mean, one thing that, and I don't know if Tiffany is still online. Oh, yeah, I do, is, I mean, look, we've done this for some other programs that we've looked at that we didn't necessarily all agree. We don't know where it may go. But I certainly would be very open, and I'll say right now, I would fully support the idea of a pilot or something and say, why don't we do this for, help them get started? Because I fully agree with Susan. I mean, we don't even know how many people are going to join. Will it be under the 400? Will it be over the 400? And we'll get a sense of costs. We'll get a sense of traffic. we'll get a sense of usage, because right now, I think if you look at the current listserv, and there are very good reasons maybe why it's not active, but we don't even know if a listserv is a forum where people are all of a sudden going to be participating. So I mean, just in the sense of municipal understanding, I'd be good for looking at this as like a pilot, with the idea that frankly, if it works and it seems valuable, I like Susan's idea. I mean, I would certainly put in, I mean, again, if you have like a residents concerned for communication or something like that, I'm sure we could get 10 or 15 residents to each chip in 20 or 30 bucks, and
That's it.
it's done. But, you know, again, and the last thing I'll say is it's the 40th anniversary. You know, I'm up for the idea of, you know, let's do something in good faith, but with the idea to pilot, it's limited to this 1-year trial. And then we could take a deep breath as long as there's an expectation, right? I don't know. That's how I
But
see
then
it.
again, if it's a 1-year pilot, then there's the sustainability issue that Yasmina raised. So
Right.
we're gonna be looking at it again. Why
Again,
not just
right.
try, take a stab at it now at getting it started
Well,
by,
I hear you.
by
but
a GoFundMe?
I do think well, I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying, I'm just giving an option. I'm good with a pilot. And then I think there's an expectation that it's communicated that, you know, this is not a perpetuity investment. And if residents see that this is valuable, it's hard for me to imagine that you're not going to be able to get one or multiple residents say, here's my coin, just keep doing it. But I think I'm okay to catalyze it to just see if it's a viable thing that helps the community. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. A 1-year trial.
Yeah,
Good.
I would be supportive of that.
But the question is, maybe I mean, how would you feel about that? Without having your other members here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I understand the idea of a 1-year trial, to be honest, Jeff, and I really appreciate your support, but we already have a listserv, right? We know how the listserv functions. We know that this is something that residents use. We know that from the survey that there's a demand for it. So I think this is the residents have expressed their desire for a listserv. We need to listen to those residents, and that's why this group got together and put this proposal together. So we have one of our committee members who said, I will pay for the whole tool outright if the council doesn't pay for it. But we don't want to be beholden to anyone specific. We don't want any, you know, because that goes back to controlling speech, right? This is really a community tool for the community. And I think it's up to the village to really, this is a philosophical discussion for the council about what it feels its role is in terms of supporting engagement within the community of Martin's Additions, whether it feels it has a role there, or whether it feels that its role is building streets, building sidewalks. We already have an example with the Anti-Semitism Committee of the village feeling that it has a role in engagement, in discussions around, you know, within the community, right? That precedent has been set. There have been dollar outputs in terms of that committee. So I don't see, I think we're actually coming with something that's a lot more open here. That's very different. And so to suddenly be restricted feels a little strange for me.
Well, it's not restricted. It just says, give it a try. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Something
go,
better
go.
than nothing. is
I do
how
have to
I
say
would
one
look
And
at
I
it.
don't know that
Yeah.
this committee will go. I think, I actually think that might be an issue that the committee might say, well, if the council is not going to pay for it, let's continue with Google, even though we know there are problems.
Well,
even
no,
though
I'm saying,
we
we're
know there
saying we
has to
will
be,
pay
because
for
that's
it.
That's a free tool, and we don't have to worry about the future of the tool.
Well, just like Congress, I mean, just putting in perspective,
We're more
as an annual,
we're more responsible.
as an annual budget, like, so we can't, I mean, I guess we can't vote to say we're gonna fund this forever. That's not, so
Right.
I think it's gonna be an annual review anyway.
Anyway, yeah.
So
Right.
again, From my perspective, and again, I don't expect everyone to agree with me, I think the idea of a pilot project is a good faith sort of showing that we believe it's valuable. We do have some questions about things. We don't even know if there'll be a really big response by residents. I do, it was Tiffany, sorry. I saw you, Laurie, just in my sight. But I mean, I lived, in East Africa for almost a decade, and, WhatsApp and things like that are great. I think they could be really great for like emergency notifications, right? Not from here necessarily, but for residents. But with all of that said, yeah, I'll put my mouth on mute. I like a pilot. I'm okay, and we'll manage it, the idea, and then we could always see. But I don't think there's anything we could do anyway, because it would have to be an annual budget decision anyway, if you see what I'm getting at.
But I think it sends a different message when you put this up as a pilot rather than saying that it's something that will be reviewed every year as part of the budget. And then I want to.
Okay.
let you guys
Well,
have your
well,
discussion.
okay.
But everything, correct me if I'm wrong, but everything is reviewed every year. So it's not like
Kind
this
of
is,
starts as a pilot.
so if we could, if we wanted to, we
Yeah.
could term it differently
Yeah.
to say that for this particular year,
Mhm.
but, just making a caveat that this is not a perpetuity service. This is something that will be reviewed by whoever's on the council on an annual basis, right? But that's just my 2 cents.
We have a lot of people.
Oh, a
wanna
lot of
comment.
questions. Well, since I'll open up to.
Well, I want to say, I agree. I agree with
I
you.
agree too. And I think, something's better than nothing, and we don't know till we try. So I'll just say that. Do you mind if we take a couple questions?
You're the boss.
All right, Tiffany, I see your hands up, and then Larry. Is she on mute?
Tiffany, you're muted.
Oh, okay.
There were other people before me, so if it's okay with you, I'd rather they go first.
Okay.
Larry.
Larry, would you like to go?
No, Tiffany, go ahead first. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Now I need a whistle. Just go ahead. Whose mic's off? Larry, your mic's, go ahead, Larry.
So who do you want to go ahead?
Go ahead, Larry.
All right. The issue of potential liability, everything the entertainment committee does is a similar situation of trying to make the life here in the village pleasant, and there's a risk of somebody objecting to it. So that's just this isn't substantially a greater risk. And I just want to say I totally believe that the council, the government shouldn't be dealing with how it's run, but funding it, I absolutely endorse it 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, whose iPhone? There's an iPhone. Allison?
Oh, and Tiffany.
Hi,
Tiffany just-
sorry, thank you. Yep, this is Allison Peterson, Dead End Delafield. Thank you so much. I just popped on real quick. I am in full support of a listserv, whether it's funded by the village or not. I'm willing to help out in any way possible. So I've been here 6 years, and we have had, obviously, I've mentioned here before, a lot of turnaround in our neck of the woods. And I actually was on the listserv for a year and then had got kicked out, didn't have any access to it. We have our free little library in front of our house. We have kid book meetings here, music times. We have so many activities over on this end of the neighborhood. And so a lot of the new neighbors were wondering how we communicate. So I actually have created, at first it was a mini listserv for this end of the neighborhood, since I reached a dead end, no pun intended, with just the help from the neighborhood. I'm getting communications up. And so what we end up doing, we have about 25 people, close to 30 now, just communicating. And all is positive. We've kept it positive. So if there's any help on the end of moderating, I'd love to also volunteer myself if anyone's not available. But we have kept it good on our end, and we're willing to join anything that's new that brings in the larger you know, scale of the entire neighborhood, but we have on our side already started something because we just felt like it was so needed and so vital for this new people in the neighborhood and old. So anyways.
Thank you, Allison.
Oh,
Okay,
and I
now-
will just say
Oh,
it's
yes.
been going on, sorry. I will say it's been going on about like the official, like and the numbers have been rising probably 6 or 7 months. And again, no problems yet. Everyone's been very cordial. We've kept politics out of it. And I made that very clear when we kind of set it up. And yeah, it's been great. So.
Now, Allison, would this be a merge of the listserv? I mean, would the Dead End Delafield listserv now join a new Martin's Edition listserv, or do you think you'll still
Well,
keep?
so, and this actually has gone past the Dead End Delafield. This has gone on to Thornton Apple, Summit, other families kind of on the spectrum. So wherever we meet someone that is, you know, is frustrated with the communication, we've been like, oh, come on board. So we do have other residents. This would not be a merge. This would be, say, drop our thing and we're hopping on. We're really excited to just have like larger communication. I even, you know, thought about starting like a Facebook thing, but our big problem with that was we didn't think that it would be, you know, welcoming to everyone of walks of life to be able to get on that. I know a lot of people don't do Facebook. So we wanted something more accessible for everyone. So this sounds great. And I've really enjoyed like listening to everyone's thoughts and ideas, and everything sounds great.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Allison. Appreciate your comments and that you put together a listserv for Dead End Delafield and beyond.
Allison, quick question from Jeff here. Which platform are you using, by the way? And kudos.
Oh, I think she's back on mute. I think the other she is.
Right now I'm actually just using Google, but I actually think that the ISO platform is a great idea. I'm actually also on the BCC listserv run as well. So just bringing, I think that is actually where I actually got offered to take.
Oh, I think
We
her
just
phone
we just
call
lost you.
fell off. Oh, sorry, Allison. I
You dropped.
stopped hearing you. Are you, Allison? I don't know if she can.
Bet your
Call
cell
back up.
phone went bad, yeah.
Maybe the phone went off.
I think Tiffany has also been waiting very
Okay.
patiently.
Is she
Well,
there? Is she still there?
Allison, well, if you raise your hand again, we'll circle back if you had anything else to add. And then I think we lost just connection with you. Okay, Tiffany, are you ready to speak? Is Tiffany?
Sure, thanks. I just reiterate, a pilot doesn't address the questions that were raised earlier. And if there's a way to do it that the group could consider that would keep it out of the village hands, that would not require annual funding from residents or from the council, it seems that might be an option worth exploring. So I sent you guys and Yasmina an email with some information.
Yes, received. Thank you.
Could I ask a quick question for Ron? Ron, oh, I'm sorry. I see someone. Oh, that.
No, I think that's an old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ron, quick question for you. This is very in the weeds, but transactionally,
Yeah.
is there a difference between if we are reimbursing a resident for something versus the office pays for it directly? I'm just trying to get into the semantics of, because really we don't want to have any, and I say this in the best possible way, it's not a negative thing, but we really don't want to have to think about it, right? Like we don't want this to be an issue. So for example, I don't even know what could be an inflaming thing, but let's say someone's on the listserv and says, you know, that Jeff Bland is a jerk, right? Or you get things that are out there like attacking either the council. I'm not saying it'll happen, but I'm just saying, you know, so we want to not get into this thing. We want a clean transaction. Is there a clean transaction where we could reimburse a resident, but it's not the same as like a direct payment from the village? I have no idea.
Yeah, I think there's a slight difference transactionally with respect to liability. I think the argument that it's in an official listserv is stronger if you're paying for it directly than you are the client from the provider's perspective. And if it, if it's a one-off, it's a little different. Of course, if there's a contract for multiple years, then you're on the hook that way as well. With reimbursement, I think it's a little more clear that it's private.
Okay. I know we could talk ad
Yeah,
nauseum on
let's-
this, but I kind of, I mean, that's, yeah. So if we could set it up in a way that
Okay.
is a clean, basically, we're not doing it directly, a receipt. And again, from my perspective, I already looked, I didn't see, it's like you can't purchase a license forever, right? It's an annual license that would be reviewed. And personally, I think if you get this chance and I'm hoping it becomes really wildly successful and people really use it. I think we've missed it, you know, for a lot of reasons. And then you'll have the evidence. I think you'll get people to,
Well, we just heard
Yeah.
Allison, you know, and thank you,
Yeah.
Allison, so much.
That's
I
great.
think I mean, there's
They can't
great
hear
life on Delafield.
So,
They
yeah.
can't hear you.
They
when you're
can't
sitting
hear
there,
me,
yeah.
so.
Oh, I did see George,
I can hear you.
George McAlee's hand is up. George, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to raise, I mean, I'm all for the idea of the listserv. I've tried to get on the existing listserv since I moved here 5 years ago. I have small kids. I would love it. It would be an incredibly valuable resource. But to me, I fundamentally just don't think it makes sense for something where it is public funds going to something where moderation guidance is being developed by people. It's unclear who, it's unclear what the process looks like. And ultimately it's being moderated by private individuals who then can decide on their own with no formal process who does and does not get to access this village service. So Jeff, I'm just going to build on your example. If I keep logging on and saying, Jeff Blander's a jerk, do I get banned from this service now that my funds are going to pay for, but now I can no longer access? So I think fundamentally for me, I would love to have a listserv that is big, robust. The thing Allison has sounds incredible, but even if it's a very small amount, it's still public funds going to something that is being entirely privately run and privately oversight and with no real council oversight. And so fundamentally to me, that is a problem. But I would love it if this listserv did exist. I just don't see why it has to exist being funded by the village.
well said.
Well
All right.
said.
Thank you,
Okay.
George. Okay, well, one thing I noticed in the proposal here, that so the goal is to launch a new listserv by March 2025. So,
Yeah, we'd have loved to announce it. I
yeah,
have to
it's,
go back.
that's very exciting to me to know that.
Um,
And I'd love to sign up, so.
Oh, here's an idea.
We would have loved to announce it at the brunch. It would
So
have
how
been really
about-
nice.
How about you use it as your kickoff to
We would
do a
have-
fundraiser?
We can definitely, I mean, I hear you
At
loud and
the
clear. Maybe what we
room.
need to do is the fundraiser. I also want to reassure George that in terms of the moderation rules, one of the things we loved about this tool is that with Google, what was happening is people were getting banned because there was no, you know, clear, easy way to, moderate a topic. Here you can just, if a topic gets out of 10, you can just stop the topic and say, please take this discussion somewhere else. And we're not telling you how, what you can say, just there's a place and time for everything. So as we do in council meetings. So this will allow just to not ban people and everyone can stay on the listserv because we think it's really important for everyone to be able to participate. I don't agree in banning people. So I just want to say that.
Okay. Thank you. Well, it seems to me we have three options here on this topic. We could go with the pilot and agree on that tonight. We could table a vote till next month when all five of us are present. Or we can go with this fundraiser idea and announcement at the March 2nd event. So I'm for either
I'm-
one or two.
I'm flipping back and forth.
Okay, all right, maybe you need a little more time to think,
Well,
okay?
law is Robert's rules, so
Yes.
if there's a motion, someone needs to make the
Okay,
motion.
Okay.
I do want to, oh, please go ahead. Please go
Oh,
ahead.
I move we either table or do a self-funding rather than public funds.
May I ask, Michael, we just contracted University of Maryland to do a study for us. Could they provide some, a quick, like, this could just be a quick email to them or something? Have we done this already? Do they have any insight on community listservs in small, governments, just that they have options that they know about?
That contract is now done, so we've finalized it and paid it, so they're no longer working for us.
They answered?
Maybe I could call them, yeah.
Okay.
But that's not in the scope of the current agreement that we had. We do have the survey, results and all the
Yeah,
data.
I wanted to see if they just knew.
And there
if
was a
they
lot
had
of comments on
list
there.
that
Yeah.
They just knew in the back of their minds from
Yeah,
working,
that, yeah,
they
give
had
them a call.
ideas of platforms.
Yeah, yeah.
But why don't we make the motion to table a vote to next month?
Are you making that motion?
Well, Susan started.
Okay.
Let
Yeah.
Susan start.
So, yeah,
Susan make the motion.
I had actually made it a bifurcated, so I'll just go with tabling until next month.
Okay, so then when we're all present, I think that would be best. Anyone want a second? Anyone want
I
a
will
second?
second that.
Arthur will second, all in favor?
I'm not in favor only because I feel, unless there was something that Ron said that, really he felt was an issue for us, especially as a pilot and, in this innocuous way. The last question I would have asked for Ron is, is there, if we do it in some transactional way, and it could be for whenever the vote does come up, what I'm getting at, is there a way of doing this so that we, like I said, just don't care? We don't have a worry about what goes on there, that there isn't anything that we have to pay attention to because it's transacted in a way that we have zero liability. We're just, gift or whatever, we're just creating a receipt for a resident. If that is answered, then the pilot is a no-brainer for me. I think it's something needed. But if we really can't address that, because I'm thinking at the federal or other levels, I don't know of usually what'll happen is there would be like a contracted third party that may run something in a way, but I just, running listservs as a community is not exactly a government function. So I just want to know, in this case, is there a transaction you could do that we don't have to think about it, we don't have to care about it, folks can run with it?
Yes. So as a practical matter, I would recommend the village council against putting any strings because, as George noted, you don't want to say we're gonna fund this as long as you do A, B, and C, because then the line gets blurred even more. So how it would work is you'd have a budget line item, reimbursement to, the 5 residents for their private listserv. And, that's voted on by the council and that's it. The one string would be that they use appropriate disclaimers, approved by the village. But other than that, I would recommend against any sort of rules, or any guidance on moderation, etc. And as a practical matter, I agree with what you said, Jeff. Whether you call it a pilot or not, it's a pilot because you're going to be approving it annually in the budget.
Sounds good.
All right, so we're to be continued.
Good.
That's my best answer, but thank
Thanks,
you to the residents who worked on this, to Marty, to Susan, to you, Yasmina, and to David, and to Jean, and to Allison and her new listserv that's out there too. And I think I feel comfortable if Andrew could weigh in too. We'll think about it. We'll let him marinate. Okay. Thank you though. Thank you for your work on that. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next agenda item. Speaking of community, on another note, I'll try and go as fast about on the background as I can, I know, because of the time. So I recently received a request, along with other leaders of the Chevy Chase municipalities by Council Member and Treasurer Katie Vale, another Katie, Section 3. And Council Member Vale reported that the Section 3 Council recently voted to approve $13,000 in funding toward the renovation of the outdoor classroom at Rosemary Hills Elementary School. So the total project is estimated to cost $65,000. It is the hope of Section 3 Council that neighboring jurisdictions, such as the VMA, might possibly match the amount that they voted on to contribute, which is the $13,000, so that the project could be fully funded to benefit the many students who attend Rosemary Hills from all of our neighboring communities. So Councilmember Vale, of course, provided many compelling reasons to fund this project, which goes beyond the scope or max of what the school's current PTA can fund, and in order to meet the school's many needs. And personally, I am a big supporter of the Rhinos. Both my daughters attended Rosemary Hills, at the tender age that the students go there, which is pre-kindergarten to second grade. And the school holds a special place in my heart. But my daughters have also gone on to attend the other public schools in our feeder system, which is Chevy Chase Elementary, Silver Creek, and now BCC. And we even had a parochial stint at Blessed Sacrament. So I know, though, for a fact that all these schools always need money. That last I checked. So, and I know many of our resident students also attend other private or public institutions beyond the aforementioned. So that said, while the project is beneficial to the Rosemary Hills students, a contribution from the VMA would raise a few issues, according to our current code of ordinances, which I'm going to say section 2-401C. Did I say that correctly? The section states, notwithstanding anything to the contrary herein, it's a lot of illegal areas. Okay. No municipal funds may be expended for donations or contributions to public or private institutions, programs, facilities, or charities, whether or not such entities benefit the village and or its residents. And then section 2-401D further states that nothing in this section shall preclude the village council from encouraging village residents to support institutions, programs, facilities, charities, or other entities that benefit village residents, or from facilitating the work of such entities, for example, by mentioning them in the village newsletter or allowing the use of the village office for meetings and functions. Sorry, that was a lot of legalese. I'm gonna need some water, okay? But I would like to note, I did receive a couple of emails from, residents questioning, the discussion of this agenda item tonight and what that could mean, for other schools and school fundraising. And so to be clear, I don't think it's up for a vote or a decision. I just really wanted to, apprise the community that we receive such requests. And just like our last very robust conversation about the listserv, I would like to hear from, my colleagues and the community, about what that current code means for the future. So, what if future council wants to amend that? What if future council wants to make a community contribution, like on a case-by-case basis, or at least like have a line item in the budget for potential, philanthropic requests each year. For example, 3 years ago, you all probably remember this email. I was a newbie on the council, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, more optimistic than. There was a natural gas explosion at the Friendly Gardens Apartments in Silver Spring, and it displaced basically all the residents, and many of whom were classmates of my daughters in the local schools. And I recall our local elected officials like Senator Jeff Waldstreicher asking communities to help and contribute. And so, during the first year on the council, I asked my colleagues if we might consider making a donation from the VMA to that Silver Spring community, and that same code was cited. So, I would just like to hear the thoughts from council, before I circle back to Council Member Vale to explain why the VMA would not contribute at this time.
So if I could start, I was on the council, I think it was the first year I was on that ordinance was passed.
Mhm.
And the reason at the time was very clear. Richard Krajicek was the chair at the time. And requests were coming in more than schools. I would say easily we could get 100 or more requests a
Mhm.
year from the community chest, the Red Cross, and
Right.
so on. And the question that was raised as a question, how do we make decisions?
Mhm.
Who do we choose? We do not choose. How do we decide on the amounts? And at the time, the council members thought that those kinds of choices, they didn't want to go into those kinds of choices.
Mhm.
If you support the community chest but not the Red Cross, why or why not?
Mhm.
How much? I mean, if we were to support anything, we would have to first change the code and then move on from there. I could see if we did change the code, a number of different approaches. We have a budget amount, $15,000, say, and it's first come, first served.
Mhm.
Whoever's in the door first gets $100 a piece, or $500. You could come up with a rule, $1,000 a piece.
Mhm.
Or you entertain requests on an item by item basis.
Mhm.
And until your budget is exhausted and it's kind of first in the door. But then how do you make the choices?
Right.
You are going to go around, and how are you going to argue against Rosemary Hill versus another school?
Mhm.
And so these are the kinds of issues that would arise. And considering the challenges in dealing with those issues, it was decided we're not going to face it at all, just going to turn off the tap for everybody. And unless council members are comfortable making those kinds of choices, kinds of process, the budget amount, who gets it and why,
Mhm.
or why not, I suggest that we continue the current code and the current prohibition.
Mhm.
Now, doesn't mean you might have really good reasons for changing it and coming up with methods in the
Mhm.
future for how to deal with it,
Right.
but it's a challenge.
Right. Especially under that wording right now.
Yeah.
Jeff, would you like to comment? I know you serve on a local PTSA, and so I know I was saying when you had to step out of the room that all the schools need money, and they're always.
And it's more than schools.
That's
I mean,
true.
it's-
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
it's the Red
community-
Cross,
Right,
it's all sorts of
Right.
organizations.
And like yeah.
So
And
I'll
it's
just say, I don't want, I know it's, we want to keep things reasonable this evening, but I want to parse this in two specific things. The very specific opportunity that has come before us
Mhm.
versus the code itself and some of those restrictions. And I see those as two different things, but I'm going to focus on the opportunity. The code piece, I think, is something that is deserving of some discussion because I do think it's a little heavy-handed and that we could look at it because there may be just some things like, for example, as I mentioned, this is our 40th anniversary. And I know that we're having I don't know what the proper word is, but a community gathering. And you know how much I love the gatherings, but there's an optic now of just, there are folks who are struggling, whether there could be our community, there could be outside our community. And so I've shared this already, the idea, for 40th anniversary, wouldn't it be great if we could say we're going to cut some token amount to, let's say, Mana or something and say, this is our 40th anniversary and we want to make a special pledge to show that we are community and that we are here for you. So all I'm saying is I think that there are sometimes exceptions I would like to look at that are special. And I don't like to be so heavy-handed in our code that it basically doesn't allow me to do that. Now, Ron could perhaps chime in a moment saying maybe there is a way that is possible if we have a super majority or whatever, and we could do it in a way that we would still be within compliance. But that's another discussion for another time. It could be for the next budget cycle fiscal year. But I want to just say now very briefly on this opportunity specific to Rosemary Hills. So our daughter went there. I've served on the PA. I was briefly elected as president for the Chevy Chase Elementary. I'm on the executive council for Silver Creek, but our daughter also went for several years private. So I concur with the idea of that, just this specific opportunity, knowing that perhaps 50% or more go to private schools, there's something about it that it doesn't pass the sniff test. Now, with that said, there may be some ways, if we had a listserv or something, maybe it could be publicized that, hey, folks are creating this drive, and would you be interested as a private citizen? I think that would be great. I think the other thing, just putting in perspective, and this is the last point, we do have some regular contact with Council Member Friedson, who at the big town hall on these land, zoning things, schools came up. I mean, I think this is an issue for them. This is something that the council, I think the county council, if they're going to go through zoning, and it's even going to create more burden and stress on schools. And here in the current day, the schools are struggling. I mean, I would like to see the county pony up and see what they're doing to support this. I don't think it should have to all fall on the private citizen. So that's my 2 cents. I love the idea. I love Rosemary Hills. I do. I mean, such fond memories and everything. But I think this specific, it's not like I'm Scrooge. It's just, it's hard to justify this school versus the private schools and other schools like Silver Creek. We just had to cut $10,000 of programs at the school because we missed our mark in fundraising. So we had to cut out like all these art programs from the school. So, I could easily say, hey, could we donate to Silver Creek PTA so we don't have to lose the Shakespeare program, right? Who was run by a resident here, who was very, obviously was very disappointed that had to be cut. So over.
Yeah, Susan, did you want to add to that?
I think Jeff made great points about picking and choosing winners and losers. And I think as we discussed the last round of discussions about donations, it's a slippery slope. So,
all right. Well, I will circle back to Member Vale. So I'd like to hear from the residents too on the issue, but why don't we do that in resident comments and just move on to the next item. Approval of January 16th council meeting minutes. Have all the council members had a chance to review?
Do we have a question? Did someone
Oh,
say
did
something?
Ron have a question?
Ron?
I believe I'm excused now. Is that correct?
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, Ron.
Thank you.
Ron, before you go, you might be charging me for this, but could you disclose the name of your cat before you go?
Dusty.
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 Okay,
Okay.
thank you. I've been
Okay.
wondering now.
Say
for
goodnight.
Over a month.
Did you see me
Say good
sneeze
night
right
to
after she walked by?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good night to
Good
Ron
night.
and Dusty. All
Katie,
right.
can I ask Ron a question, please?
Yes.
We're on the clock though, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
But-
what was the other municipality that you referenced on funding the
The
Yes, sir.
listserv, yeah.
Chevy Chase View.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. Thank you, Ron.
Good night.
Okay. Have a
Good
nice
night.
night. Okay, yes. So is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah, I move to approve, but I'd like a more fleshed out set
Okay.
of minutes.
Okay.
This was the ultimate of
Cliff
abbreviation.
notes. Okay. All right.
Which I have urged in the past.
You're like
happy
Goldilocks.
medium.
But, yeah, but not, perhaps not as skinny and as
Okay.
bare as this.
Now, if you are using the chat,
Do we use the chat
you can
feature?
do a prompt to say.
He has a response.
I have an
to
update
that.
on that. I've had some problems with the AI summaries for hybrid meetings because the in-person audio here doesn't know who's talking, so it all's jumbled together. So I have a full transcript of every word that was said, but it doesn't say who said it. So if it's 100% on Zoom, it works. If it's in person like this, they don't know that you're talking versus I'm talking. So that's that is a hitch with this format.
Well, let's take it offline. We could figure out a way where we have people announce who's speaking.
Right. Every
And
single
then-
time someone
and
says
very
something.
clearly, whether it's virtual or here, and that way the AI would pick up the person who's announcing their name, and
Right.
you could work around that.
I could potentially train the AI how to recognize everyone's voice, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, you could.
The,
Oh,
in
wow.
the
Scary.
In the meantime,
that is scary.
I am improving some of the technology in the room. So hopefully you all can see the screen today. But so that's the first improvement.
Can you
And-
hear us?
And
better?
new mics
Yeah.
are my next agenda
Okay.
item. So that's coming. But
Okay.
Arthur moved to accept the minutes as they
Yeah.
are
Is there-
with a critique, which is heard. Thank
Okay.
you.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Okay, committee reports. But why don't we start with ethics and then CEC?
Go first.
Oh, okay. So, go ahead, Keith.
Okay,
That's
this
all right.
is
Go ahead.
gonna be brief.
This is getting into bedtime.
I'm Keith Allen, for AI's purposes here with the Community Engagement Committee. And we have a big event coming up here a week from Sunday. I'm really excited about it, between noon and 3. So we're hoping we're gonna get a big turnout, and I'm sure there will be, and I'm gonna promise real nice weather on that day. So unless Michael has something to add, I don't think I have any of my committee members online here,
I don't,
but we're all set to go.
okay.
Invites are coming in the mail. They're gonna look like this. And everyone will get one.
Is there an RSVP or?
Nope,
No.
just invite.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, CEC.
Okay.
Okay, ethics and then election. And then
Thank you.
do the next one.
Susan, Lori.
Lori.
Michael, we walk tomorrow?
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah.
We did use AI again for our minutes, and we did successfully use it. The Ethics Committee's been focused on training. We conducted training in January, and we continue to use the ethical dilemma scenarios, which always leads to a lively discussion. We've also been working on updating our training slides for the website. We've decided to remove the scenarios for the slide presentation that's on the website. We felt like the scenarios lack context if somebody wants to go to the website and look at ethics training, but we have put together a library, so we'll keep them as a committee in our committee drive. Finally, we're working on a mini training module that will be part of the onboarding for new volunteers. We're working with Michael on that. And we're going to focus, it's going to be about 15 minutes long, and we're going to focus on what it means to sign the oath of office and complete the conflict of interest questionnaires. So that's it.
Okay.
Good night. And
Thank
Katie,
you.
maybe I could make a request that committee reports go back up to the
Early
beginning
on.
of the meeting.
Bump up? Sure. We'll
Okay,
make them
thank you.
earlier
Good
next
night.
time.
Okay,
Sure.
good night.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you to, yes, thank you to the committee members for all waiting so patiently. Marty, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you very much. This is going to be a short verbal report. The election committee is working on the voter roll verification for the 2025 election per the procedures approved last year and this year. We also have the announcement of the nomination period for this year's election, which is coming out on Friday, the 21st. That's 75 days before Election Day. So we begin our election cycle officially this Friday. The committee has approved and given to Michael that notice to be posted as a standalone notice on Friday morning, and it'll also be included in the weekly wrap-up. There will be additional notices. The due date for candidates to file their paperwork is March 22nd, which is a Saturday, 6 p.m. There'll be additional announcements about that. We certainly hope that residents will step forward. And our next committee meeting is on Monday evening, March 3rd at 7:30 p.m. And we will have an announcement about that coming up. Residents are always invited not just to attend, but to participate in election committee meetings because they're voters. And that's it, unless you have any questions.
Anyone have questions? All right, thank you so much, Marty. Is anyone on from Stormwater? I mean, I see Elizabeth. I don't know, Elizabeth Goldberg. Hi,
Yes.
Elizabeth. Did you have a
Hi.
report for Stormwater?
Yeah, well, no, actually, I mean, I don't have a report, but I can give a quick update.
Sure.
The task force met with the representative from Bayland Engineering Company that's going to be carrying out the project, the engineering study project, for an initial meeting, a Zoom meeting it was, to go over some points in the actual contract, to raise any questions that the task force had, and to agree on the first meeting, sort of a walkthrough with the representative from Bayland, the project manager. And so we're just trying to agree on a date coming up in the next 2 weeks that we could meet with this person and actually have a physical walkthrough of some of the sites. We also created with the help of Michael, a space on the portal for Baylands, and published several documents there, key background documents that will be essential for them to get started. A whole range of things from codes and previous studies, photos, videos, all of the documentation that the Water Task Force has accumulated over the past couple of years on the subject, that will be essential background information for the engineers to get going. That's basically where we are, but it's on the road now. It's starting up, and this is going to take place over the next 5 months.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for the update, Elizabeth. I don't see anyone from the Anti-Semitism Education Task Force on. I know they recently met. We both were at the meeting, but I think we'll just move on. So, all right. Next is the treasurer report.
I believe we did it already, but I'm happy to.
Yeah, you had started.
We're in good shape,
Okay.
except for, as I said, the sweeteners between the interest rate on our accounts and then the ARPA funds. If you were to do the math and subtract those, or make a reasonable percentage proportional, of the income that we've earned from the interest rate for our account, essentially we are at break even. And we don't know yet, as Arthur knows and Susan, everyone knows, what will be the tranches of income that comes in from our taxes. It's possible we could take a dip this year. I mean, if you look at the headlines and what's happening, well, it may not impact till next year, but local economies are being affected by the what's happening to the federal service now. I'm not sure how it's impacting our community, but my guess is that we will not be immune to it.
And we do have our budget meeting next week. I encourage everyone to come. Last year, we got some good questions that may help us think about some things. And we'll be going, as we did the last 2 years since I've been here, we'll be going line by line through the budget and having a conversation in advance of the meeting in next month, when we'll actually introduce, or the council will actually introduce the FY26 budget. So
I do want to put something here just while we're here very quickly. It'll be something that'll be discussed. We don't have to, this is not the time, but I've had a couple, residents and others, and I know it's something I mentioned to Arthur, but since then others have said in passing the idea, has there ever been for council members some sort of stipend or something? And in the idea of, people say that council members put a lot of time in, and is that perhaps the idea deterrent, or would it help people to run, not like some big, like, oh, you get a, $50,000 salary, but something in the order of a magnitude of like it's more than a token, but like $1,000 or something. And then, there may be some ways transactionally, as it go to one of their, is there a way to do it so that it's reasonable? It's something for Ron, but I just want to say it's come up, and it might be something to, I think when the village first started, they gave, their
$25 a meeting. And they took that $25.
Does that include committee meetings?
So
Yeah.
that's like, what,
There weren't
$5
committees.
an
That
There
hour?
were no
actually add
committees.
up.
They
Yeah.
took the $25. They took that money and pooled it and hired a manager.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, thank you. for
Yeah.
taking
I mean,
the
it would be
take
an
on.
interesting topic
for a
You're our
future annual survey, right? To just see,
Yeah.
would, in terms of running, is
Would it be
there
an
a barrier?
inducement?
Would a
Yeah.
remuneration change your mind?
Would someone run?
Because you're not talking about something that monetarily would be, but it's more of a token of saying, we appreciate you, we value you.
Yeah.
I can ask Ron for a prepared response to this.
Yeah, I
question.
don't think,
Okay.
since it was done in the past, I don't think there's a.
Yeah, because he ate that off. Yeah.
Right, But I don't think there's a.
Write a grad paper on that right there.
I'm not
Yeah,
saying
I
that
think
it's
you're
not
right, Joe. I
happening.
think you're absolutely right. It would merit a survey question or at least some further discussion, maybe.
Yeah.
For-
You're
I
gonna
mean,
be having-
as a rule in Congress, Congress cannot raise the salaries for themselves.
Right.
It has to go in
Mhm.
the following year.
But when you have your potential candidate meetings, Katie,
Mhm.
that might be something. Just ask if,
Mhm.
that would be an inducement. My guess is it
Yeah.
wouldn't. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's de
That's,
minimis
that's my
anyway.
guess too.
Well,
But
yeah,
I think
and
it'd be an interesting survey question.
And I actually did put it out there. I was at Olympia a couple of weeks ago and La Ferme, and nobody showed up. I was stood up. So no,
Sorry, I didn't
that's
realize.
okay. That's all right. My daughter came up and joined me at Olympia. My husband came up
It's a
and joined me at La
win-win.
Ferme. But it's
Somebody
still willing to and open and encouraging of any residents who would like to run and have any questions, of course.
Right.
So, are you finished, Jeff? You're good. Okay, Michael, did you want to go ahead with your manager's report?
Thank you. It's on page 8. It's 9:27. The first big announcement that I want to start with is, and I know the council knows, but not all residents know, both police officers that worked for the village on a minimum, 5 hours a week apiece basis for over the last decade have both resigned from village service. So I want to thank Nick and Mike, myself, and I know the council does as well, for their service for all these years. With that said, this is an opportunity for us to kind of reevaluate this program and public safety overall. I know we had questions about it in the survey, so we do have those responses. So we do feel like we understand how the community feels about this topic, and that leads directly into my next point, which we already talked about, which is parking. Traffic safety tends to be one of the biggest safety issues that were raised in the survey and elsewhere. It's one of the top complaints I get. So as we talked about, I'm close to getting ticketing authority, which means I'll be ticketing you all. I'll be ticketing residents, as well as your contractors and guests. So you can start now by telling all your guests to park legally. Please park legally. Do not park in front of a fire hydrant. It's not safe for yourself or your neighbors. Moving on, I already mentioned, but we have a budget meeting next week. Please come. I think it's really important, and that's where the real sausage is made. So that's my favorite part of the job is working on the budget. So we will need to conduct a budget adjustment at some point. We've already gone over on 2 budget categories, and I don't know if we'll go over on others. I'm watching to see if there's another snowstorm that racks up another budget there. We're still under, as of today, we're still under on snow plowing costs. We did spray the streets with a de-icing brine this week, but we're still under on that. But we did go over on tree planting. We knew we were going to because there was a lot of trees that came down, and I think we had 13 public right-of-way trees that we planted this year. That was the highest ever.
How many?
13 in the public right-of-way, but then there was another 30 some
30.
on private property.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's really moving.
this is our biggest year, and I'm not expecting that to be the case every year going forward. So I actually think that'll come back down. And we also went over on printing and mailing. That's a very small budget line item, and we did a couple of mailings ourselves, and then we also printed and mailed the new directory. So we ended up going over that budget category. Will probably just need a bump up. So not a problem there. And I did attach again the administrative calendar and project lists. Those are on pages 11 and 14 respectively. The project list we talked about briefly is on the very back page. And I highlighted the things that are completed and the things that are started. So you can see there, and we have 2 items that have not started yet. One is the traffic calming measures that we've talked about, and then 2 is the council ordinance creation process. Jeff had asked me to kind of detail that out in an SOP. Knowing that we'll have a new council starting in July, we'll probably be planning some sort of onboarding for at least one council member. So that's an opportunity to do that. So that's still on my list, and we'll get those all at least started before the end of the year. Project updates, other than that list there, is Brookville sidewalk. I met with Jason Azar this week, and he's going back and forth with the State Highway Administration. He has already responded to the first round of comments that they provided to him, which included the stop sign at Bradley, included the crosswalk at Bradley, included a number of other things. Overall, from the first round of comments, they said, this looks good. There's a couple things you're going to have to do differently than you thought you were going to have to do. So he has addressed those.
Like what?
Like the crosswalk at Bradley, we will have to redo the ramp on the other side in section 3, as well as the ramp on our side we'll have to redo. Even though that's really, the crosswalk goes and runs into a ramp, but they're like, well, that ramp isn't up to code, so you have to make that ramp up to code too. Things like that. It's all very, very small.
Okay.
And then we also, made several adjustments to our plans as a result of some meetings with residents down the things. So those adjustments are all at the State Highway Administration again for the second round of comments. So now they go into more detail and look at very specific things. There's a telephone pole. We got to figure out what we're going to do here, all those types of things. There's a fire hydrant that's adjacent to one of our ramps, and how far of adjacent does it need to be? All of those types of things. Every single step, every single brick is going to be analyzed. We're expecting at least one more round of comments before they actually issue our permits. The timeline is, we're still on the timeline. We're hoping to get our permit from the State Highway Administration in March. We're hoping to post the RFP for the paving contractor in April, which means we can make the selection for the contractor who's going to actually do the work by the end of May. And then they'll need a month to probably stage and get ready for their work. And so then we can expect a start time on our current path, our start time in July. And they're expecting this project to take between 1 and 2 months. So we're probably talking about July and August of actual construction work. Brookville Road can only be closed from 9 to 3 p.m. Under state law, so it has to be short work days. We will have, a flagging portion of the contract where they will be doing traffic control down Brookville and closing at least one lane for probably 2 months. So if you're going to take a trip, maybe this is time to do it. And that flagging contract in of itself is probably going to be over $100,000 for the course of this project. So this is not a cheap project. And there's still potential for showstoppers or needing to make big adjustments to the plans. So we're waiting on pins and needles for those comments. I will be meeting with Jason Azar again as soon as we get those comments back from the state to go through them and answer them together so that I'm fully apprised. And I would invite in a council member or 2 if you all wanted to join me on that meeting to walk through some of those specific sites. And I know, I've kept you all updated on some of those very specific issues where the right of way is really tight or where there's an easement needed. So there's a lot of issues we need to work through, but if there's a council member or 2 that want to take this on as your project and want to work with me all summer, we'll probably need someone on the ground every single day that there's work happening. And so it's going to be a big project, and this is going to take everything from this office and from this council to pull this off. This is the biggest project we've ever done. and the state and the county and engineers and pavers and
Yeah.
flagging. And it's gonna be big.
Well, I nominate Andrew.
Yeah.
He's
Okay,
not
so
here.
that's Brookville sidewalk. I'll take any questions offline about that anyone has.
I
That's-
think,
great.
oh, so sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, were you finished with your report?
No, that finished with that piece, but
Okay.
do you have a question on that piece?
I think it would be good to follow up, and again, I could do this administratively, is just, review the risk management plan, just in case, what are those, checks if the wheel starts to go flat or falls off or something, just to make sure that our residents know we've got something.
Contingency plans for each step, yeah.
Yeah, and costs too, cost overruns, which are a big concern in projects like this.
Yeah. And once the engineer will be putting together the bid package, which will be an attachment to the RFP that we will post on the state Maryland website. And that bid package will have all of the details about how thick the concrete needs to be and all of that. So yeah, that'll be a chance to look at that.
Awesome. I have one other thing, but let's wait until your report's over. I had one very quick,
Okay, I'm almost done. Building report is in here. You'll notice my comment there under buildings is that Ron, Doug, and I have kind of noticed an odd part of the village code, section 7402J1. Says that no driveway is allowed to be wider than 10 feet with a surface that is the same material, which then kind of means that something of a different material is allowed to be.
Yeah, I think, as I recall, I may be wrong here, but my recollection is that there was a question at one time, what do we mean by a driveway? How do you define a driveway? And the answer was, well, it's of a uniform material. So anything up, off that is not part of the driveway. If it's so you have concrete and then gravel, the gravel is not part of the driveway. So
And
there,
actually,
yeah, go
Ron
ahead.
was involved in that.
I think he helped draft that. Yeah. But and it was a deliberate attempt to define what do we mean by the drive? How do you know when you're on the driveway?
Also to alleviate the just massive
driveways
appearance of like a 12-foot wide driveway. If you
Yeah.
have a
Break it
10-foot and then you
Okay,
Put on
so that's fine, and that's my that's my reading of the code, so
Yeah.
we're all on the same
Yeah.
page.
Yeah.
And just so everyone knows, you can't just, cement in your entire front yard with two
Yeah.
different types of materials.
Right.
Because there is the 30%
permeability.
permeable limit.
Yeah.
Only 30% is allowed to be non-dirt, so. But that does not apply to Brookville Road. I just want to make everyone aware of that there's an exception for Brookville Road where if your front yard is Brookville Road, there's no limit to how, so if you're on Brookville Road, you could actually cement in your entire front yard as long as you don't use the same surface. So that's the code
Right.
that's here.
Yeah.
And that's just
Yeah.
there's several circle driveways coming and I want you all to be aware of this piece of code. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have attached to this meeting's packet the building administrator's report.
Okay.
Nothing huge coming other than a deck here, a deck there. No big new houses.
But Lori had noted that there are now several houses for sale on Cummings. I mean, it doesn't appear in the building report, but it's just, I think she said five?
Five, yeah.
Five, yeah,
Yeah, well, there's 3 that have been built and no one's moved into them yet.
right.
And then there's one.
I saw
for
one,
sale
I didn't notice the fifth one.
One's
Maybe
vacant,
new.
Yeah. A couple other things that I didn't put in my report. One, I do have a direct line now. This helps me when I'm teleworking. So if anyone wants my direct line, you can have it. I'm only going to answer it during business hours, so it's not going to work for emergencies or something. But it sometimes when I'm teleworking, it is good. I do need to call people, so I have that. And it's on my business card. So if you all want it, you can have it. And
We don't have to call your cell phone anymore. We can just call you.
you don't have to call myself, but you still can't call myself.
Well, thank you.
Anytime.
I don't like the
We are scheduling 2 streetlights to be updated. There's the you'll remember one halfway down Chestnut and then one on Thornapple are the old, very expensive lights that never got updated for some reason. We've confirmed that we own them. We have now paid Pepco to update the streetlights. So I paid for it and it's deposited and now they're gonna schedule it.
So now we can start saving money on those lights too.
But that's right.
Excellent.
And
that concludes my report. The calendar is in there and I've added a little check mark to everything that we've checked off. So you'll see that we're on pace for where we said we were gonna be at this point of the year.
Good.
We're
All those
done
checks.
everything.
Very nice.
Good.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much, Mike.
My one quick comment that we can take offline, but just putting out there. I noticed, so we use Microsoft Outlook for email, is that correct?
Correct.
So do we have the Microsoft suite? The reason why I'm asking, do we have Teams? Do you know if we have that as part of our Office suite?
We do. I haven't implemented it or started using it, but
I'm
we do have
sharing
access
that.
to it. Yes.
We could take it offline, but I use Teams all the time at the State Department, and it is really very effective. So it's basically it's a little bit different than Zoom, but it's the same thing. But when we do the narratives and however folks are set up in it, it is very clear who's speaking. Like there is not an issue at all, and it's really extraordinary. So I just put it out there. If we're paying for it and it's a feature, we could test it and see if it helps you.
Yeah, we could test it.
I know there could be kerfluffle if we go from Zoom to Teams, but I just wanted to mention.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Fan of that either.
Yeah, that would take some testing, but
that would be, I think.
It would just be a link. I mean, it'd be like Zoom.
Yeah.
but-
I've used it before, but
Yeah, but everyone would have to have it. I think I downloaded it once and then scratched it when I had one use for it.
We could test it with, and see.
it's a good thought.
All right.
And yeah.
Good. All right. The second resident comment section. Any resident comments or?
Elizabeth
questions?
Goldberg.
Okay, Elizabeth, and then then Marty. Okay, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. After listening to the discussion tonight on whether or not to provide funds in a couple of different topics, I would like, I think that a community with a budget the size that we have, the amount of reserves that Jeffrey indicated at the beginning of the evening, and also the enormous reserve budget, I mean, the amount of surplus plus the reserves, I would like the committee, the council to consider, and maybe this is something for the budget meeting, that they do entertain meritorious charitable contributions after paying the bills and making sure that everything that needs to be paid for is paid for, but that funds could be set aside for such purpose, or would be set aside as long as they are available on an annual basis, you know, to be given to whatever seems to be the best organization or service that is out there. It just seems to me that, I mean, that's all part of being a community, being in the community, and helping out. And I would, you know, a group that is well funded as we are, it seems that it's wouldn't be too much to ask to do that. After all, you're very generous with things. I was thinking all night, my goodness, it's very difficult when you're talking about exchanging information. The discussion went on for an hour. You know, if it were compost, it probably would have been over in 10 minutes. I mean, that's something we can all get on board with. So, but please do consider that of setting aside some kind of a fund that would be contingent on, you know, after everything is paid for and done, that we could be generous in some way towards the community. That's all, just to put in a little.
Elizabeth, while you're thinking about that, do further thinking on criteria that could be used to make judgments and procedures to be used to make the choices.
Okay.
That these are two challenges that would be faced by anyone, or by a council making these, by trying to do this.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. One of my neighbors is in a giving group, a giving circle that involves about 10 or 15 people who, instead of giving to individually to 5 or 10 or 15 organizations, they give their big donation together, and then they're able as a group of 10 or 15 to make a much more significant grant to fund, and it's all local, the groups that they go out, and they're all researched and justified, and so that's a good thing. I'll be happy to get some information and come back to you.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Elizabeth. And then Marty?
Yes, thank you. And again, I appreciate all of your work on the budget meeting that's coming up. Jeff, when will we as residents be able to see the line-by-line budget document that you're going to go over on Tuesday, the 25th?
I'm going to defer to our magnificent manager, who I know, if he can't respond momentarily, he will be able to respond shortly.
Well, the budget is posted online and it's been pretty identical every single year. So you always have access to that. It's posted.
Where is it posted online? Where could we find it?
Governance, and I think that's the first or second tab is budgets.
Okay, and that has the line-by-line budget document?
Absolutely, yep.
Thank you.
And that goes back years and years.
Yes, I've looked at it in many previous years. I just couldn't figure out where to find it this year.
Yeah, it's there, and we'll go line by line, and during this meeting we'll literally be typing in the number. I'll share my screen and we'll type in the number that we think is going to be there. I'm collecting right now. I'm collecting the different comments for, different line items, whether I think, how much we've spent this year to date, and if I have any comments about whether I know it's going to go up. I know leaf vacuuming, for example, is going to go up because Montgomery County just passed a requirement that you won't have to have electric leaf blowers. You can't use gas leaf blowers anymore. And our contractor, Rolling Acres, has already told all of his clients that that's a 10% increase right off the top. So we'll have comments like that for each line item, and we can build those in.
Okay, that's very helpful, and the sooner people know where to find it, I think the better. Second thing on the budget meeting is I congratulate you and thank you for holding it in the evening this year. Last year it was in the afternoon, and those of us who worked couldn't get to it. So really appreciate you scheduling it in the evening to make it available for residents. The other thing I have is kind of fun, but I'd like the council to consider down the road, perhaps in July and August, as we're paving the sidewalk along Brookville Road, that we actually put a little brass plaque there somewhere in that sidewalk that says, "Thank you to Michael Silliman for being the village manager who finally got that job done." Because we've been asking for it for the 40 years I've lived here. And Michael, I think you deserve some public commemoration. I don't know that we can give you a bronze bench, but I think we could have somebody at least, I'd be willing to come down there with a pencil and etch in the wet pavement. Thank you, Michael.
Well, Marty, I have suggested that we have set aside a few blocks for people to put their initials in, kids as well as as well as older kids.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, absolutely yes.
The budget just went up significantly.
Anyway, I would simply like to
stick to write in.
Mr. Azar.
I would like to formally recommend that Michael Silliman be recognized for his role in actually making this project happen, shepherding it step by step through all the many steps involved. And I appreciate
when I retire, you can build a bench for me. Until then, I don't need any praise.
It has been a miracle.
Thank you, though, Marty.
Well, you have a thank you from a 40-year resident here who has often taken her life and her dog's life in my hands, walking up and down Brookville Road, and I have great appreciation for you fixing that sidewalk at long last. Thank you for doing the job.
Let's get it across the finish line.
I see, I
Thank you,
think
though,
Tiffany
for
has her, yeah.
Okay,
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's
and
Larry,
it's Larry.
I'm sorry. I keep seeing QB, and for some reason I'm equating it to Tiffany. I apologize.
Well, it actually stands for QuickBooks. This is the computer that I do all my accounting on.
Oh, but it was
No.
quarterback. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yes.
I wanted to just, this would be complicated. However, I think it's very doable. Elizabeth brought up something that I think is important. We know we had a surplus of money and we were, at one time, I think 2 years ago, we discussed different ways that some local villages gave back some of the tax money to the residents and how that was done. And for years, I have sort of thought that we're losing our community and family structure of things. And I have sort of been trying to think of a way that our children can be involved in our village. And I thought perhaps when Elizabeth brought this up, we could maybe talk to the Community Engagement Committee, some of the PTAs. But wouldn't it be interesting if we had some of our children could volunteer or work on a committee that made the decisions about which things we would give money to, that they would be the ones to think it through, make evaluations to the council, and do that sort of thing so that they start thinking about not themselves alone, but giving to others. I think it's a huge, all those things that we used to have that showed our children how to function and what to do are disappearing. And I would be more than happy to spend the time with anyone that wants to work on it to try to figure out how to take that somewhat complicated thing and put it together. So that's what I wanted to say.
Well said. One thing I will put out, and again, it's been a long evening, is one thing that I have always felt would be great is if we did solicit in very specific ways. We have to be careful because these are probably minors, right? So there has to be consent and parental, involvement. But the idea of having an internship, and I even, it could be minimum wage or something, and there could be some very specific type of thing. But I do think that that would be pretty cool. They could work maybe a newsletter. I don't think we'll have 100 kids joining, but I think for the couple that would find it interesting, it might be worthwhile. So anyway.
Thank you.
I would like to piggyback on that idea with the Scouts troop that we have here. And, there are Scout merit badges in local government. And one of the things that I would like the council to do down the road is work more closely with our local scouting troop to involve kids in getting their government merit badge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that, is not even as formal as an internship, but would involve a council member, at least one, willing to take the lead on supervising that, because Michael has his hands full without supervising an intern. Can't wait till my dog is chiming in. I'm going to say goodnight.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I don't see any other hands raised at this time. So any last council comments from anyone? Any concluding remarks? Okay, well, I just want to remind everyone to please spread the word and attend our annual community brunch at La Ferme on March 2nd from noon to 3 p.m. This year we'll be honoring our 40th anniversary as a municipality, and we have all invited, I should say, local elected officials to attend, and we have a special program in store and menu in store, and we hope to see you there. So thank you to everyone who attended tonight's meeting. Our next meeting is Thursday, March 20th. Is that right? I'm going to make a motion to end the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
There's
Second,
a lot of
third.
second. Okay.
I'm
All
third.
in favor? Okay.
Aye.
All right. All right. Well, good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.